Coming up on Good Journeys with Ben Veal.
I think I'm really fortunate in that, like, my personality makeup is one that the extremes don't really speak to me. The extreme hate I get, it doesn't really penetrate or resonate or come through, because I know who I am, and I get my sense of self and my identity from a very small, close circle of people who know me, who truly know me. I don't take to heart anything that somebody might have to say about me if they don't know me, and that includes literally everyone on the internet.
Welcome to Good Journeys with Ben Veal, the show that explores the trails traveled and lessons learned from some truly incredible people.
Hello and welcome to another purposeful conversation here on Good Journeys with Ben Veal. Joining me for this episode is a shame-slaying, hip-swaying, chart-topping drag queen, powerhouse vocalist and award-winning songwriter from North Carolina. Flamy Grant's incredible music blends country, folk, gospel and roots influences to deliver a theatrical, therapeutic and wholly original experience of intrepid storytelling, all shared through the evocative art of drag. Flamy has been nominated for Artist of the Year in 2025's International Folk Music Awards, and I'm so looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have together today. Flamy Grant, welcome to Good Journeys. How are you?
I'm great, Ben. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Oh, it's pleasure's all mine, especially that I get to have that intro. I'm just going to say it again because that was so much fun. The shame-slaying, hip-swaying, chart-topping drag queen. That is a wonderful
right.
tongue twister, and I didn't come up with that, so I'm not going to. They're your words, not mine. But it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, every drag artist needs a good tagline. So I feel like mine manages expectations while also being fun to say. It's hip swaying. It's nothing too crazy. You don't expect any death drops or, stunts or splits or rock-a-taka-taka-taka, none of that. And then, yeah, just the singing, songwriting, shame slaying, it all kind of fits.
Well, I'm so pleased to be having the chance to share your story today. I mean, at the time we're recording this, you're getting set to tour the United States on the Church tour.
Yes.
So talking about your new album, Church, seems like a really great place, an obvious place to start. So tell me about the inspiration behind this album, because it's a really powerful listen.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm so thrilled with this record and just proud of it and happy with how it came out. It's the first chance I've had to write a record from start to finish, fully in Flamy's voice with kind of my drag in mind and knowing that I'll be performing all of this in drag. The first record, which I also love, was a little bit of an accident in that, I kind of set out to record a couple songs in drag and just see how that felt. And then it ballooned into a full record. But I was pulling from songs that I had written years prior, long before starting drag, and really kind of cobbled together that record, just from a broader period of my life. Whereas with Church, this new one, I wrote it all within, just a matter of months. And it's all very much kind of responding and reacting to the journey I've been on, over the past, several years now, moving into being this full-time singer-songwriter in drag, with the Christian component, the Christian music component, the dealing with religious trauma component, all of that. I was really able to write about that experience and where I've been and where I'm going with it all. So it's been fun to kind of see all of the songs come to fruition. It's also the first time I recorded a full record in Nashville with Nashville artists, just incredible musicians.
Wow.
Who blew me away minute by minute as we sat together in the studio. And so yeah, it's a fun record.
I mean, just being in Nashville and being surrounded by so many of those iconic places and studios, and just knowing the footsteps you're walking in must be an incredible muse for you to kind of have that experience and know, everyone in country is recorded in Nashville.
Yeah, truly. I'm just, It's such a great city. I don't think I would want to live there personally because the traffic is absolute hell. But I love to visit Nashville. And yeah, like you said, it's just the history of music in that town, being able to kind of, just step into that mode for a little bit and know that we've got people who, the people who played on my record have played on crazy records and done amazing things. Of course, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Guitarist played for Allison Russell. One of our drummers was Keith Urban's tour drummer. So it's just like just amazing, like to kind of rub elbows with those kinds of folks who for them it's like this is just their life. This is what they do. They live in that city. They tour from that city and they get to play for all kinds of crazy people. And for some reason, they said yes to a drag queen from North Carolina. So,
well, it's because as I said when we were off air, it's because you're incredibly talented. I mean, I've been absolutely hooked on your music since my wife introduced me to your work after seeing you at Greenbelt last year here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
When you released your debut record, Bible Belt Baby, so a couple of years ago in 2022, that record reached the top spot on the iTunes Christian chart. Now, given that you're coming at this as a drag artist, were you surprised by the positive response that you received to that record from the Christian community?
That's a good question. Was I surprised? I know, I have known for a long time that there is a movement and a market and just a community within Christianity that is, progressive and affirming. And, I've been, my whole life trajectory has led me into that place. So I was, a worship leader in a affirming LGBTQ plus affirming church for 8.5 years prior to the pandemic, and starting drag, that's really when all of that started for me. So I'm not surprised at the fact that there's an audience there for what I do. I think it was definitely surprising, to crack any kind of chart at all as a drag singer-songwriter. That's not really, that's not a thing that most people kind of consider when they think about drag or singer-songwriters. You don't tend to put those two together. But it's been really cool to see how deeply some folks have embraced it and recognized that the Christianity of yore that is, especially here in America, evangelical, traditional, fundamental, all of that, like that's not that representative of the entire faith, right? That's not at all representative of the broad spectrum of people who call this faith their home and practice this faith. So it's been really cool to see, that sort of embrace happen.
So you mentioned, obviously, the dark days of those surreal times we all lived through. So that's when your drag journey first began, then, was it? What talk me through the kind of the moving into drag and what kind of got, what the inspiration was for that and where that came from?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just like so many people in 2019 who, had a busy life and had been on a trajectory. I'd been working in nonprofit for 15 years at that point, and you get to a point in life where you think you've kind of like settled into what you're going to do. While I had long had an interest in drag and even prior to the pandemic had kind of dabbled in it a little bit, I'd gone out for like Halloween and house parties and things like that in drag. I never thought that I would find it just never crossed my mind that there could be a career shift for me that would take me in the direction that I've been in. And so it really is, I don't want to say thanks to pandemic because it was what a terrible time for the whole world. But for me, the silver lining of that time was that I did, like all of us, I was sheltering in place at home and had so much spare time that I'd not had in years and years. And so I used that time to just kind of dive in and started just in my bedroom, just started painting my face and having fun, just really having fun with it was all that was. And like anything, I think the more I did it, the more I enjoyed it, and it just picked up steam. And before I knew it, I was writing songs with my drag persona in mind, and then recording a record. And yeah, I never saw it coming, and yet in retrospect, it's kind of amazing how, looking back at my whole life, the journey I've been on, it really kind of all feels like it led to this, because drag is the art form where I can put all of my favorite things into one package, right? I can have fun with the makeup and the fashion and the costuming and the performance of it all, which is a ton of fun for me. I was a total theater kid growing up. Loved being in the school musicals and college plays and things like that. But that's all stuff that I had kind of lost in as an adult when I was, working my day job. I never lost the music. I wrote my first song when I was 9 years old, and I've been writing ever since, off and on. And I've always performed in some way, shape, or form, whether that was just like as a solo artist under my government name way back in the day, or I've been in a couple different bands along the way. But still, music was always kind of the side hobby, the side hustle. It was never the main thing. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, all the volunteering at church, the being a worship leader in churches, the music, the theater, the love of theater as a kid, like it really all kind of culminated in this. And so now it all kind of makes more sense to me than it did at the time.
Well, you're not the only person, I think, to say it seems so strange to say the words "thanks to the pandemic," given everything that happened during that time. But I found my purpose and shift in my life during those years. A lot of people did. It was the first time in our lives when we'd been able to pause and also potentially think about shifting gears and doing things differently. It was a very powerful time for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
I didn't dabble in drag, but I did set up a business about purpose. So we all do different things. But I think what's really interesting is, like, obviously it's one thing to kind of try out drag at home and see how it feels, but it's another thing to obviously make the decision to go out in front of an audience and tour with it. So how was that for you, that kind of journey? But I imagine it must feel quite vulnerable to start off doing that.
Definitely. Yeah. I started, like, my first performances, quote unquote performances, were just from my basement. I lived with my husband, and I shared a house with another couple, and they're both singer-songwriters and artists, and Ben is actually the producer of my records. So we started a kind of a weekly live stream during pandemic, like so many artists did, where we just get on Facebook and sing some songs, and I started showing up to those in drag. So that was really where I first started performing in drag. And then, once the world opened up a little bit and the bars and clubs in San Diego, which is where I lived at the time, started opening up, I had some friends in the drag scene, and I reached out and said, hey, if you've got a spot in your show, I'd love to try my hand at this thing. And so, a couple friends booked me in just more traditional drag shows, lip syncing, dancing, that kind of stuff. Not that I'm a good dancer at all, but I did sing live in a few of those. But I started performing in the local drag scene, and just, oh my gosh, so fun. Just had a blast with it. Like, drag shows are the most fun I think I've ever had in my life. And I just love a good drag show. I actually got to go just this past weekend, I now live in Asheville, North Carolina, which is the town I was born and raised in, but we just moved back here about a year ago. And I've been on the road for most of that year. So I haven't felt like I've been back in my hometown. I haven't had a chance really yet to get to know the local community. And so I went to a local drag show for the first time since moving here just this past weekend, and I lived. It was just the most fun I've had in such a long time, and I was like, oh gosh, I miss this. I really would love to get back into just like a more local traditional drag scene. It'd be so fun to be able to perform in that kind of space again. But what my drag turned into and where it's taken me now is I'm a singer-songwriter who does it in drag, so envision the typical singer-songwriter career where you are just hustling, you're on the road all the time, you're playing listening room, club, bar, church, sanctuary, whatever. And I just do it all in a wig and a corset. And so I'm traveling all around the country, and now sometimes occasionally, up into Canada, and then overseas last summer in the UK and the Netherlands, just performing my songs and singing my original stuff in drag and to anybody who will listen.
Looking amazing whilst you're doing it, I must say.
Thank you.
So there's a track on Church that I've got to ask you about, Revenge, which is such an incredible track, and you sing a couple lines in this song which are I don't want revenge, I want a shot at a life where being queer doesn't feel like a nightmare. So that feels like a good chance to ask you about the journey you've been on with kind of self-identity and where that all began, and your experiences of queer culture, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I have a story that mirrors so many others in that, I was raised very fundamentalist evangelical. So anything queer was outside of my scope of experience. I was very protected, quote unquote, from the world. I was isolated is really what I was. Prevented from having access to anything that might have shown me queer culture in a positive light. So the only messaging I ever got around, we wouldn't have even called it queer culture. They just would have said the sin of homosexuality growing up. Any message I got was just that it's a sin, that has dire consequences, that, you risk losing community and family and God. You risk losing everything by, quote unquote, giving in to the lifestyle. So, I, even as I slowly became aware that I was gay, I still use language like, I struggle with same-sex attraction. And the first few people I came out to, that's how I came out. I said, this is the thorn in my side, the thorn in my flesh, like this is my sin that I am dealing with. And, I mean, it really was a decade long or more, long process in my 20s of coming to terms with my sexual identity first, and being able to come out as gay, and finally being able to, like, when I was 28 was when I finally said, I'm here, I'm queer, it's okay, God doesn't hate me because of this, and I'm gonna date men.
Wow, that's such a long time to not know who you are.
Oh yeah. And I mean, during that I'm glossing over a lot during that time. I self-enrolled in conversion therapy for 5 years. I was, like I said, I was a worship leader, and I was working in churches alongside my day job. So, I would get hired by a church and be like, before you hire me, I want you to know that this is what I struggle with. And they would assign me accountability partners or, pastors to meet with every week and that kind of stuff. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. My 20s were a lot. And I think that, I think so much, I think this happens for a lot of queer people, or just anybody who's dealing with a lot of shame and oppression, is that takes up so much of your energy, your mental and emotional energy. And you really don't have a whole lot to give to your being, like you're becoming. I feel like, I try not to live with regret, because I don't know that regret actually serves us all that well. But for sure, there are times when I think about what my life could have been if I had been raised to trust my body, to trust my intuition, to to know that being queer is not sinful or bad in any way. Where would I be today if I had that opportunity? Would I have started? Or
dare I say it, if maybe you've been born 20 years later? I think there's been such a big shift, because this is, I'm guessing you're talking the 90s when you were growing up. I think you were
90s. Yeah,
so it was the same in the UK. I mean, being gay was an insult. That was in the playground. It was always it was used as an insult, and I don't remember any positive figures of homosexuality, really. The only figure I really remember at a mainstream level was Freddie Mercury, and of course that was wrapped up in AIDS. So I don't remember growing up any positive role model of gay men. really in my life.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think Ellen was probably one of the first people. Ellen DeGeneres was one of the first people I encountered. And I remember having to tape, on VHS cassette, I taped the episode of her sitcom called The Puppy Episode, where she comes out, her character comes out on the show. And I taped it, and I had to secretly watch that because, I wasn't allowed to watch that in our home, obviously. And so, yeah, it was sparse. I mean, there were people, obviously, there were queer people doing that work and being activists and working on the front lines. There always have been. But the access and the visibility to be able to see those people, it was much easier to limit in the 90s, I think, than it is now. But that doesn't mean that there still aren't kids growing up today in the same kind of isolation that I grew up in. And I know because I encounter them on the road. I think it's just as important as ever to have queer representation in all spaces, including weird spaces like Christian music. So
it's not a weird space, is it? Because this is this fascinating line of, what it is to be a Christian, what a Christian has to look like. The example that Jesus set, and where do we, how do we all fit into that? It's not a weird place at all. We need more of this conversation. I mean, there's a lovely line I spotted, like when I was researching you, about your musical message, where you've described it as incendiary to some and cauterizing balm to others, which I think is a beautiful way of describing it. But I mean, what have been some of the reactions that you've received from audiences, like the positive and the negative, and how's that affected you personally, away from the public persona of Flamy Grant?
I think, as far as the responses, yes. It's what kind of response have I gotten? Yes. Every kind of response, everything, right? Like from the absolutely vehemently opposed and antagonistic and hate spewing, saying awful things, all the way to the kind of the flip side of that coin, which is just the heaping adulation. And there was a pastor, a reverend once. I played this church, and the reverend took me aside and took me by the shoulders and said, "You're the one we've been waiting for." And I was like, "Baby, stop putting that pressure on me, girl. I can't with that." So I think I feel
you want to be somewhere in the middle with the feedback, don't you? Neither of those are very comfortable things. It's not good to be hero worshipped either.
No, it's not at all. In fact, the thought crossed my mind at one point. I was like, I wonder if Jesus got that same kind of response and became a Messiah because of it. Because I was I'm as you're receiving that, I'm like, my goodness, it would be so easy to believe the hype about yourself, coming from that particular line of thinking, and think, wow, maybe I am the chosen one. Maybe I am the Messiah,
especially in the world we live in today, where you can, get these hundreds of thousands or millions of followers on these platforms, which can very dangerously feed into your sense of self and self-importance. So it's so important to be on guard against all of that. I think I'm really fortunate in that my personality makeup is one that the extremes don't really speak to me. The extreme hate I get, it doesn't really penetrate or resonate or come through, because I know who I am, and I get my sense of self and my identity from a very small, close circle of people who know me, who truly, truly know me. I don't take to heart anything that somebody might have to say about me if they don't know me. And that includes literally everyone on the internet. So it's kind of the same thing with the really crazy, praise and adulation. It's the same kind of thing. I'm like, you don't know me. I thank you for I'm grateful and glad that the music and the drag and the whole package, the whole artistic endeavor that I'm undertaking is reaching people in that kind of a way. But at the same time,
I'm not your savior, baby. That's not.
The relationship though between artist and audience is such a personal one, isn't it? And such a special one, because you don't know when you're putting that music out into the world what the melodies are doing for people, what the words are doing for people, and you don't know where anyone's at in their life. It's the same as author's experience. You know, you don't know what impact you're having on people. It's a very strange, must be when you meet people who say they were really touched by your music, or your music helped them through a difficult time or something like that. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, I guess, isn't there, as an artist? But you can't. But equally, you have to just create, I guess, what comes naturally out of you from your own lived experience, and hope that it kind of resonates with people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, that's all I can be responsible for, is my own experience, my own actions, and how things are received. You know, most of the time, unless I'm out here like intentionally spreading a message that of harm or hate or anything like that. You know, most of the time, the way things are received, it's out of your hand. When you create your thing and you put it out into the world, and it's not yours anymore. Yeah. You know, it now belongs to whoever has chosen to listen or experience or enjoy and appreciate or hate. And so, yeah, but it's a beautiful, wonderful experience too, to be able to create something that like resonates with people. And I'll never get tired of hearing stories from folks who tell me, you know, like this song or this line or whatever, you know, meant something to me in a hard time, or it gave me a new perspective, or it helped me I get this a lot. I get a lot of parents, you know, because I do play a fair amount of churches. And so for a lot of people, I'm kind of their first encounter with drag. And so I'll get parents coming up to me after the show saying, like, you know, I have a queer kid or you know, somebody I know that you helped me understand a little bit better their journey. And so that kind of stuff is just, I mean, yeah, that's why you do it. That's why you put up with any of the crazy BS around all of it, is because you see the impact, you see the ways it's opening doors, creating connections, broadening perspectives, all of that. It's an honor. It's an honor to be able to be a part of any of that.
And you know, there is a lot of crazy BS in our world. I mean, it's feeling like our society is kind of becoming increasingly divided and black and white, with far fewer shades of grey out there. And you know, many of those kind of big shifts that we've seen in the US political landscape are being mirrored with the changes we've witnessed here in the UK in the last 6-7 years. You know, these divisions are becoming more and more pronounced. I mean, I'm always careful about asking a question like this without getting too much into politics, but how do you feel about the state of the world in 2025 in America?
Well, I think it depends on how close I'm zoomed in. You know, when you pull way back and you do like look at the trends and the political trends and the Christian nationalism that is rooted deeply, especially here, you know, in the American political system, it's really depressing. It's really I mean, I think there's good reason for all the anxiety and fear that people have to battle internally as we look at our country and where we're going. It is scary. The closer I zoom in, though, and by that I mean the fact that I'm my whole life now, my whole job now is to travel around the country and interact with small communities, and everywhere I go, there are people who are working, are hopeful, are trying to create safe spaces, are trying to resist the impulse and the lure of that binary thinking, that black and white thinking that just says it's us and them, and we have to win. There are people everywhere who are, you know, awake. They're awoke, right? Like they're awake to the reality that is not they're awake to the fact that that is not our reality. We do not live in a binary black and white world, and there is no us versus them. And we're all one. We're all connected. And so on the one level, yes, like we have so much work to do, and there is a fight, especially against the structures and the handful of people who are really benefiting from those structures that are in place. But for the most part, you know, I try my hardest not to look at your average Trump voter and hate them. Because I think that for the most part, people are responding from places of fear. They are swept up in movements that they don't fully understand. There is so much misinformation out there. And, you know, I know that I was raised by people who had good intentions, you know. They might have been wrong about a lot of stuff, including me and and my, you know, things that impact my life. But they genuinely wanted to live in love, you know. And I think there's so much work and education and all of it, the activism, all of it that has to be done. But at the same time, I'm trying not to lose my hope in all of it, you know, and it's hard. It's really hard.
I'm the same. And I think, you know, you sum it up beautifully. I mean, the world is full of good people who just want to provide a good life for their family and those they love, and to be part of a local community. And it's very easy to lose sight of that amidst the bigger kind of macro doom and gloom. But as you say, like, you know, you and I were talking off air about which social platforms we use and which we may have made an exodus from. And you know, people are, you know, talking with their keyboards. You know, people are talking with their feet. People are saying, I'm not willing to be part of this anymore.
Yeah.
You know, people are getting increasingly uncomfortable with the power struggle and a few voices dominating the conversation.
Yes.
But I don't think the world's all doom and gloom. And I think, you know, I know from the amount of wonderful people like yourself that I've had on this show, just how many good people there are. So, you know, I'm not too sad about the state of the world, but when you stop and read a newspaper or go online for 5 minutes and look at what's happening, it does sometimes feel rather overwhelming.
Yeah. Which
as much here in the UK as in the US.
Yeah. And that's just a thing I don't do anymore. I used to be such a consumer of news.
Yep.
And I'm just not anymore. And in some ways I am less informed than I used to be.
Oh, my wife beats me up something terribly for my lack of current affairs. I'm like, yeah, but I'm quite happy in my ignorance.
Exactly.
I'm not miserable.
But I'm happy. And you know what? I'm going to protect that first. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, world. You know, we are citizens of the world, but we're also
like her Instagram feed is like full of current affairs and political movements and petitions and climate change and all these kind of wonderful things. And mine's full of wrestling, Ghostbusters, and films. And she's like, there's literally nothing of substance in your social media. I was like, no, it's great. I just go into the world of my personal interests, and it's all good.
Yep, agreed. Yep. That's what the algorithm does, right? Yeah,
absolutely. So look, I want to talk about kind of combining these disparate worlds of country music, Christian music, and queer culture, because that's as we said before, it's a pretty tall and daunting order. And very different communities as well. I know there's obviously some overlap between country music and the Christian music scene, but it feels like three worlds that they're not really comfortable bedfellows. So how receptive were these different communities to what you've been bringing to the world as a drag artist?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I would say that there's, you know, again, it's kind of there's a macro response, like a big picture response, and then a more localized response. And on that bigger level, the gatekeepers of those cultures, so the gatekeepers of Christianity, the gatekeepers of country music, and the gatekeepers of queer culture, the two music industries, country and Christian, they're not interested in me. I'm not welcome in those spaces. As any queer artist is right now, like those are just the big whatever record labels, execs, all of that. Like they're not looking for people like me. The gatekeepers of queer culture, obviously much more friendly and open. I think I have had like some like bigger moments in queer media. Like I was nominated for a Queerty Award last year for like drag royalty or something like that. So my name was like up there with Jimbo from Drag Race and just crazy big names. But when you bring it down a little bit and start looking at more local communities and the actual like, I mean, I don't know. So like, I have to break it out piece by piece. So like the Christian piece, we've already talked about how there are, the evangelicalism and all of that doesn't represent all of Christianity. And there are plenty of churches that are interested in hosting me, in furthering the conversation around inclusion for LGBTQ plus people. So I've played over 50 churches, I think, in the past year. And, and so that's really encouraging to get to go to all of these little communities where these churches are doing the work. Same with country music. There is a kind of a little bit of a queer like thing emerging in a grassroots kind of way in country music right now. There are so many queer and artists of color as well, because country music is overwhelmingly white, and so there's just been this movement that is growing and actually I think will reach mainstream country music within the next several years as we continue to do the work. So yeah, when you can drill down and get a little local with everything, there's so many opportunities, and it's an exciting time, I think, to be involved in any of those things, because there is so much overlap. There are plenty of queer people who love country music who grew up in the church. So those are my people. That's who I get to perform to and sing to.
I know, obviously, Flamy Grant is playing homage to Amy Grant. Who are some of your musical influences that you kind of looked up to growing up, or who inspire you today even? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Amy is probably the top of that list. She was my diva growing up. I was only allowed to listen to Christian music, so there's still plenty of old like 90s Christian music that I love and will still listen to. I did stop listening to Christian music around the turn of the century when it all became worship music, because I hate worship music. It's terrible. I like songwriters. I like storytelling.
You had to presumably perform it though when you were a worship.
Oh, I did. Yeah. I was a worship leader for 20. Yeah. But listen, by the end of my 20-year run as a worship leader, the only songs I brought to church were like songs by Brandi Carlile and Pink and Dolly. Like we would just sing Cyndi Lauper. We do True Colors in church. Like I would just find songs that worked in a corporate setting, and I was done with worship music. It's.
I'd just say love to have come to your church when you were doing that for the set list.
Yeah, it was. We had great music.
You can make a lot of contemporary pop songs fit a Christian message, can't you?
Yeah.
Dig deep into the lyrics.
Have you seen that video? Have you seen that video that's been going around of like a whole church congregation singing "Like a Prayer" by Madonna?
No, but I would like to. It's amazing.
It's so funny because like the sincerity of this church as they're singing a song that they don't realize is about her, like filleting another person. Like it's just like, wow, y'all really like did not make the connection here. Right. Or maybe they did and they're like, no, we're going to reclaim this for God. But either way, it's hilarious.
We've just had, at the time of recording this, we've just had New Year's Eve, where that was like the big crescendo song of the New Year's Eve celebrations. And Sophie Ellis-Bextor was singing that backed by a full church choir, which was quite something. And again, I was thinking through in my head, like, I'm not sure everyone knows what they're singing here, but it's still one of my favourite pop songs of all time.
Oh, so good. Yeah. No, my influences are, I mean, besides some of those Christian artists that I grew up on, like Jennifer Knapp and Derek Webb, who I get to like interact with and play with nowadays, which is amazing. Around like late 90s, I was when I kind of had a little bit of autonomy finally and could start to listen to music that I could venture outside of the contemporary Christian music genre. And so I found, Lilith Fair was huge at that time, and I got super into just like that incredibly vast catalog of female singer-songwriters who were really popping. at that time. So I love, like, Natalie Merchant is probably my favorite songwriter of all time. I adore her. Tracy Chapman, Sheryl Crow, Sarah McLachlan, like, names like that. I love some, like, Bonnie Raitt and yeah, there's just so many good, Winona, so many good ones. And then, I don't know, another one of my biggest influences, a band called Over the Rhine, and they're a husband-wife duo in Ohio who've just been making music for, I don't know, 30 plus years now, probably. And so I don't know what to say about them other than they're just the most magical songwriters ever. So please, everybody go check out Over the Rhine. But yeah, that's kind of between that and the church music I grew up on, you know, the gospel, and then just kind of being in the South, being around Appalachian folk music and bluegrass, you know, those are my influences.
Yeah, I mean, what a place to grow up, and what a bunch of incredible influences to have. You know, I talk a lot about purpose on this podcast, and you know, we've touched on it today with kind of you playing in churches and getting the opportunity to kind of speak to younger audiences. I mean, when it comes to your music and the connections that you've made with your audience, like, what's the driving purpose behind what you do musically?
I think it's I mean, in this moment right now, you know, we're obviously talking about this album Church that I just released, and I wrote this album to really put a fine point on my own journey, my own relationship with the church, and where it's taken me, and where I think I'm headed from here. So you know, the songs I'm singing on stage right now really are speaking to that experience of growing up in this world that was, you know, where I was traumatized, and I was traumatized by religion without even knowing what it was happening. So it's speaking to that religious trauma experience, but it's also speaking very much to how I'm hesitant to say overcame, because I think it's a thing that you will always, you know, I still will find myself getting triggered in ways that I, you know, didn't anticipate or didn't expect, but for the most part overcame and like can live a life now free of the shame and free of the oppression of that kind of an upbringing. So it's about that journey of resilience. It's about a journey of queerness and coming into your own identity and learning to love yourself and celebrate the things about yourself that the world tried to shame out of you. So that's where I'm at right now. But, you know, I think I think that question probably will always have a different answer. You know, if at any time, you know, in a year from now, I would have a different answer for that question, I think, because hopefully I would, because I think that's the job and the role of an artist, is to like continue your own growth and continue to look at the world around you and what's needed. Like, why am I here? What am I here to do? And I think moving forward, I hope that I don't want to be the Christian music drag queen forever. Like I feel like that is a for such a time as this kind of moment, you know. I think there was a need for it, and that nobody had really done it yet. And so I think it has meant something for a lot of people to see a drag queen representing in those kind of spaces. But, you know, I'm, at the end of the day, I see myself as a singer-songwriter first. And outside of a genre, especially a genre like Christian music that is so identified with a belief system as opposed to a style of music. Yeah. That's the weird thing about Christian music, right? It's not actually a genre. It's an ideology. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know really where it goes from here, but I'm very open to where that journey takes me.
Well, I mean, it's always hard to look ahead too far, but I mean, focusing on 2025, like if you had a crystal ball and you could see where you would be at the end of this year, like what are your hopes for the year ahead with Church and this tour and this album?
I mean, gosh, my hope is that a lot more people hear it, that I get to play to larger and larger rooms. Not like I don't think I actually want the like stadium career. I mean, as cool as that would be, but you know, there is a struggle to the independent musician life, especially playing in new markets, as much as I do. I've only been doing this full time for just a little over a year now. So every time I play, it's over the past year, it's basically been a new market. So, I've been building up my audience, and building up the reliability of ticket buyers. So, I hope there are more people listening to music.
People over with your set, isn't it? It's like people that maybe.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Say, for example, at a festival, as I said, my wife went to Greenbelt, knew your music, actively sought you out, but the two friends she went with had never heard of you before, and then fell in love with the music during the set. But there's that almost that element of like you have to kind of convert people to your talents over the course of the set who are unfamiliar with you.
That is exactly what it is. That's the job, and thank goodness for festivals, because those do you cover a lot of ground at festivals.
My favorite artists over the years have been people I've stumbled across at festivals. Just like, what's that? You listen to something and you're like, oh, wow. And that's where it begins. It's a wonderful opportunity to just get a little sample and taster, isn't it? Also, when you're usually in a really good mood as well and you're having a nice time and the sunshine, and that always helps.
Yeah, the endorphins. Yeah. So that I do have some new music I'll be putting out this year. I am working on a book proposal I've got a literary agent. So hopeful that there'll be a book deal in the next year, and I'll be writing. And then I have. Would that be reflective memoirs? Is that looking back at your journey, or is it more fictional? Yeah, it'll be memoir. The way we're pitching it is kind of like Tina Fey's Bossy Pants meets David Sedaris, which are you familiar with David Sedaris? Meets like a Donald Miller Blue Like Jazz style, like spiritual coming of age memoir. So very funny, very episodic, not like biographical, but like kind of just dropping into key moments in my life. And I'm a drag queen, so it's going to be cheeky and fun and really entertaining, hopefully, but with these like nuggets of meaning and purpose, hopefully, throughout. So I hope it's a fun read that makes people cry once or twice. Like, that's the goal. Cry, but also come away with some learning, some good memories, and just getting to know you a bit better. I mean, that's the beauty of any good book, really, isn't it? A memoir, relatability to the audience. And I think that's what I just want to encourage anyone today that, is listening or watching my show who isn't familiar with your work before, or maybe isn't really familiar with, drag or queer culture particularly, just to actually just check out your music, because I guarantee you'll be blown away, and hopefully some of my audience will become your audience too through this. I
mean, it's always hard to know how to support musical artists these days, because it's a very different world to the days of going out to a record store and buying a CD or a vinyl. It feels sometimes it's quite hard to know what actually does benefit independent artists. What are the best ways that my audience can support you as an independent artist? Beyond coming and seeing you live, because of course many of my audience are in the UK, so those that aren't able to get to the US to see you live.
I mean, that is for sure the number one way. And so for any artist that you follow, please, when they come through your town, go to their show. It is just, that is where the rubber meets the road, both like financially, like that is where we make our living, is on the road, but also that's where the best stuff happens. I feel like everything I do on social media is just so like, it's like the secondary to me. Like, to me, the meat of my job is when I'm performing live and getting to have that face-to-face interaction with an audience. So that's where the magic happens. So go see your favorite artists. But I mean, for anybody who's really interested in supporting me, I do have a Patreon, and that's, you could, for as little as $3 a month, I think is the smallest way to support me on that. But there's fun perks and behind the scenes stuff that happen there. And then, just listening to the music, sharing the music, wherever you listen. I'm not one of these people who's like antagonistic to the whole streaming industry, although it does, it has made life very, very hard for artists and songwriters. But it's what we have right now. This is the world I live in. And so,
but does it also open doors? I mean, obviously I know it's not the same as, the old days of buying an album physically, but presumably, and this is my naivety asking the question, but presumably the higher you rank on Spotify, the more that helps you with conversions to live ticket sales and visibility.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It all works together. It's all integrated. And it is one of those things where there's still this gatekeeping component to streaming where, if you can get placed on like an editorial playlist on Spotify, that's going to be amazing for your career. But that doesn't really happen without having a little bit of a, organization and machine behind your work. So I'm now with.
Is there a movement for kind of more LGBTQ plus playlists and kind of curating content for that community?
There are, yeah.
Those streaming platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are. And honestly, like there are people who just create their own playlists and sometimes those will just take off themselves, so like adding your favorite artist to your playlist, all of it all helps. It's all very helpful.
I think I've got 4 followers on one of my playlists. I'm literally going viral. Yeah.
That's it. that's all it is. So yeah, just sharing the music. That's a big way to help.
So what are your socials? Plug away.
Oh, I'm just Flamy Grant on everything. So fortunately, it wasn't a popular name when I went to claim all the handles. So I'm Flamy Grant on whatever your favorite social media is. You won't find me on a couple of them because I'm just not going to engage. But Instagram's my favorite. That's the one I use the most. If you're on there, Flamy Grant. And otherwise, I'm on all of the streaming services, YouTube, Pandora, whatever you listen to. So yeah.
Pandora. Never even heard of Pandora.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I feel like I'm missing something.
Oh, it's like it's been around a long time. It's like it's like radio. Like Pandora is kind of like radio, but you put in one artist and it'll just create a radio station for you based on that artist. I mean, that's like, you can do that with Spotify now, but Pandora was doing it a long time ago.
Oh, I like that. That's cool. See, I learned something through every conversation. I love that. Well, I mean, look, I just want to encourage everyone just to reiterate. I mean, Flamy's music, so many theories of kind of songs and themes around kind of resilience and recovery, but also just beautiful sing-along songs and just great artistry, great music. So I think there's something for everyone in your catalogue of work so far. And as you say, it's not even a huge catalogue of work. You're a couple of years into this, so I'm so excited to kind of follow your journey. And yeah, I'd love to do this again sometime when you're kind of, when you grow and grow and grow and see how this evolution goes. It sounds like you could go in 1,000,001 different directions and just beginning in many ways. So I'm excited to see what's next for you. And hopefully we'll see you over in the UK again this year. That's my hope. Yeah. So I always like to kind of end ideally with a couple of bits. So one is lessons learned. That's a big theme of this show. So this journey that you've been on so far of kind of self-discovery and finding yourself and I guess kind of creative expression through artistry. Can you kind of pull out any lessons that you've learned about yourself that would be helpful to others who are maybe trying to find who they are in this world?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest lessons I've had to learn is that to not mistrust my own body and my own intuition. I was raised to think that the heart is deceitful above all things, and so you can't even trust your own inner voice. And not to say that your gut is going to get it right every single time, but your gut does work in conjunction with your mind and with what you've learned, knowledge that you've acquired, wisdom that you've acquired. So don't discount your intuition. Don't discount your gut. Your heart is good. Listen to that inner voice and let it be part of what guides you in your life. I mean, I would also just say that one of the things that I think I've learned, had to learn a lot over the past several years is that it's important to protect and preserve your own energy. We've talked a little bit about the divided world that we live in, and it is so easy when you kind of zoom out and see those big headlines to think that, gosh, like everything's a battle and everything's a fight, and there's so many people who are against me, and really, for me, I found that my energy is best spent when I put it back into those close relationships, the people that know me well. I used to be a keyboard warrior who would get into those Facebook arguments and then go back and forth. And my gosh, you will not find me doing that anymore.
No one benefits from doing this. It's such a waste of energy, isn't it?
Yeah, huge waste of energy. So yeah, protect yourself, preserve your energy, and know that it's not your job to fight off every internet troll who comes into your purview.
Because that is a battle you will not win.
No.
And what about final question for any kind of aspiring singer-songwriters out there? Obviously, you've carved this real niche for yourself. Any advice or lessons you've learned along the way of going down this rabbit hole so far of becoming an independent artist?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can find an alt-right person who is pretty universally despised by reasonable people, and you can get that person to come for you online, then you too can, quit your day job. I think it really, I've had some really lucky breaks like that for sure that have helped kind of speed my process along. But with every day, I just learned that it really does come down to the work and consistency and reliability. If you show up and you show up on time and you do what you say you're going to do, and skill and talent, all of that comes into play. You gotta know what you're good at. You gotta know what your strengths are, but so much of it comes down to being the reliable, consistent person in your job, no matter what it is. So with music, that it's showing up to the venue, it's being communicative, it's being collaborative, and you will eventually make a mark, make an impression, and people will remember that that artist was someone who was really great to work with, and we want to work with them again. So yeah. I
have if you see it, I have steadfast tattooed on my hand.
Yes,
as a daily reminder, because I think consistency and just showing up are really overlooked attributes in the world today. And actually being known for one thing and being someone that people can trust and rely on to deliver on their promises. So it's my kind of daily reminder to stay on the right track, stay the course, and not be distracted by all the noise in the world.
Yes, that's fantastic.
But if you're going to be distracted by some noise in the world, then make it good noise and make that noise Flamy Grant. Well, look, thank you so much. I always wrap up with a couple of thank yous. So one is to my brilliant producer, Jeff Easton from Tall Lake Productions, who always brings these Good Journeys conversations to life so wonderfully. And secondly, to my wonderful audience for joining me for these purposeful chats. But my biggest thanks of all goes to you, Flamy Grant, for being such a wonderful guest, for such inspiring music and your message that you're putting out in the world, and just for being very open with your journey today. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a delight. Appreciate it.
So that's it for this purposeful conversation. This has been Good Journeys. I've been Ben Veal. Keep on climbing, be good to each other, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye.